Hey guys, we know you love these long 20-story videos and we love the feedback we get. However, it takes a while for our small team to make them. That's why we've moved over to a new channel, Wideawakehorror Extended, just for our long stories with a bigger team, and we will be uploading the longer stories from that channel from now on. So guys, please head over to our new channel and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any new videos. The channel link will be in the video description and in the comments. Let's try and hit 1,000 subs on our new channel. I know you legends can get us there. And when we upload, comment that you're from the original Wide Awake Horror channel so we can appreciate you as one of the OG members. Thank you so much for being part of the Wide Awake Horror family. We hope to see you on our new channel. We love you guys.
Alright, so here's the deal. I'm sitting here, still trying to wrap my head around the absolute disaster that was my blind date experience. It's been a week, and I'm still reeling from it all. I mean, who could have predicted that one stupid date would turn my whole life upside down? It all started with my best friend Alicia. We've been tight since college, always there for each other through thick and thin. Lately, she's been on this kick about how I need to put myself out there more. According to her, I've been single for too long and need to start dating again. Usually, I just brush off her comments, but this time she was relentless. For days, she kept going on about this guy Sebastian from her work. The way she described him, he sounded perfect, great sense of humor, the whole package. She swore up and down that he was exactly my type and that we hit it off instantly. After what felt like a million texts and calls about it, I finally caved and agreed to go on a blind date with him. The day of the date arrived, and I spent hours getting ready. I'm talking trying on every outfit in my closet, doing and redoing my makeup, the works. Despite my initial reluctance, I found myself getting kind of excited. Maybe Alicia was right, maybe this would be good for me. I got to the restaurant feeling pretty confident. I spotted Sebastian right away. I had to admit, Alicia wasn't lying about his looks. We sat down, ordered some drinks, and started chatting. At first, everything seemed fine. Normal first date stuff, you know. He asked about my job, my hobbies, told me a bit about himself. But then things started to get weird, like really weird. Sebastian kept bringing up Alicia. At first, I thought maybe he was just nervous and talking about the one thing we had in common. But as the night went on, it became clear that wasn't the case. He went on and on about how funny and smart Alicia is, how great she looks in her work outfits, how her laugh brightens up the whole office. I sat there getting more and more uncomfortable by the minute. Just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, Sebastian started asking about Alicia's relationship. He wanted to know how long she'd been with her boyfriend, if they seemed happy, if she'd ever mentioned any problems. I tried to deflect, saying I didn't really know much about their relationship, but he kept pushing. Then came the kicker. Sebastian straight up asked if I could help him break them up. I was floored. Who does that? Who goes on a date with someone and then asks them to help break up their friend's relationship? I made some excuse about needing to use the bathroom and got the hell out of there. I didn't even bother going back to the table. I just texted him saying I got sick and had to leave. As soon as I got home, I called Alicia and spilled everything. She was shocked. She kept saying how nice and professional Sebastian always is at work, how she couldn't believe he'd do something like that. I told her she needed to be careful around him, that something wasn't right with that dude. The next day, Alicia confronted Sebastian at work. She told him what I'd said about the date and how inappropriate his behavior was. But get this, he completely denied it all. He said I must have misunderstood or that I was making up. He even had the nerve to say that I was the one who wouldn't stop talking about Alicia and asking weird questions about her relationship. Now it's turned into this whole big drama at Alicia's workplace. People are taking sides, gossiping about what really happened. Alicia's stuck in the middle and not sure who to believe. I get that she's known Sebastian longer than she's known me, so I understand why she's conflicted. But it still hurts that she's even considering that I might be lying. The worst part is this has put a major strain on our friendship. We used to talk every day, but now things are so awkward between us. I can tell she's not sure if she can trust me anymore, and honestly, I'm kind of pissed that she's not just taking my word for it. Every time I try to bring it up, to explain again what really happened that night, she is all weird and changes the subject. It's like she just wants to pretend the whole thing never happened. Meanwhile, I'm left dealing with all this emotional fallout from a date I never even wanted to go on in the first place. I'm second-guessing everything now. Did I somehow misread the situation? Am I overreacting? But no, I know I heard. Sebastian was totally out of line. I've thought about reaching out to Sebastian directly to confront him about his lies. But what's the point? He's already shown he has no problem lying to Alicia's face. Why would he suddenly come clean to me? Plus, the thought of talking to him again makes my skin crawl. So now I'm just stuck in this weird limbo. I've lost trust in my best friend. I'm paranoid about going on any more dates. I've got this guy out there potentially spreading lies about me to who knows who. The whole thing has me stressed out beyond belief. I'm having trouble sleeping. I can't focus at work. And I'm snapping at my family for no reason. All because of one stupid blind date. I keep replaying that night in my head, wondering if there was something I could have done differently. Should I have called Sebastian out right there at the restaurant? Should I have told Alicia in person instead of over the phone? Maybe if I'd handled things differently, this whole mess could have been avoided. But then I remind myself that I'm not the one who did anything wrong here. I went on a date in good faith, and Sebastian was the one who turned it into this twisted game. I shouldn't have to feel bad or doubt myself because of his actions. Still, it's hard not to let it get to me. I find myself checking Alicia's social media constantly, looking for any sign that she believed me or that she's distancing herself from Sebastian. But everything looks normal, which somehow makes me feel even worse. I've thought about just cutting Alicia out of my life completely. Maybe it would be easier to just walk away from this whole situation. But we've been friends for so long, and when I think about all the good times we've had, I can't bring myself to do it. Plus, the thought of Sebastian winning of him successfully driving a wedge between us makes me sick. I've considered reaching out to some of Alicia's other coworkers to see if anyone else has had weird experiences with Sebastian. But that feels like it would just be stirring up more drama, and honestly, I'm not sure I can handle any more of that right now, so for now I will move on, but honestly, what a nightmare.
Just a kind reminder that we will be uploading our longer 2-hour stories from a new channel called Wideawakehorror Extended. So please, if you haven't already, please head over and smash that subscribe button, just like you smashed the button on this channel. We really hope to see you there for the next upload. Enjoy the rest of the stories.
It's a regular Friday night, and I'm chilling on the couch, mindlessly scrolling through my phone. Suddenly, my mom bursts into the room with this wild look in her eyes. "I've got amazing news," she squeals. I'm thinking, what, did we win the lottery? No, even worse. She's set me up on a blind date with her friend's daughter. Tomorrow. Fan-freaking-tastic. Fast forward to Saturday evening, and I'm standing outside this house that looks like it's one stiff breeze away from collapsing. The paint's peeling, the grass is knee-high, and there's a car on blocks in the driveway. I'm seriously considering making a run for it when the door swings open. And there she is. Olivia. Now, I'm not one to judge, but holy cow, she was enormous. I'm talking taking up the entire doorframe kind of big. But that's not even the weirdest part. All 300 pounds of her squeezed into a white t-shirt that's seen better days and baggy jeans that are hanging on for dear life. But that's not even the weirdest part. Before I can even say hi, she throws up some gang signs and goes, "Yo, dog. What's cracking?" I'm standing there, mouth open, wondering if I've stumbled onto a hidden camera show. Olivia waddles back inside, gesturing for me to follow. The living room's a disaster zone. Pizza boxes stacked like modern art, empty soda cans everywhere, and I swear there's a bomb tucked in the corner. She plops down on the sofa, which lets out a groan that perfectly matches the one in my head. I perch on the edge of an armchair, trying to avoid the mysterious stains. That's when her mum appears, this tiny woman who looks like she could be knocked over by a sneeze. She's going on and on about how excited Olivia's been for this date, and I'm just nodding, still trying to process what I've gotten myself into. Then comes the moment that'll haunt my nightmares for years to come. Olivia's mum starts bragging about her daughter's beautiful singing voice. I'm thinking, okay, maybe there's a silver lining here. Maybe she's got some hidden talent that'll make up for everything else. Boy, was I wrong. Olivia clears her throat and launches into the most ear-splitting rendition of a Drake song I've ever heard. It's like a cat being strangled while someone beats a trash can with a rusty spoon. She's really into it, though, throwing in random yos and dogs, making more gang signs. I catch her mum beaming proudly, and seriously questioning reality at this point. After what feels like an eternity, she finishes, looking at me expectantly. I manage a week. That was something before her mum suggests we head out. We end up at this Gracie diner because Olivia insists it's the only place with real food. The whole drive there, she's blasting raps so loud the car is vibrating, trying to teach me complicated handshakes I can't even begin to follow. I'm just nodding, silently begging for the sweet release of death. At the diner, Olivia orders half the menu. I'm not exaggerating. Appetizers, 2 main courses, extra sides, the works. I stick with coffee, my appetite long gone. While we wait, she starts telling me about her crew and how they run things in the neighborhood. I'm pretty sure she's making up half the slang she's using, but I nod along, wondering how I can escape without causing a scene. The food arrives, and it's like watching a nature documentary. Olivia tears into her meals with a ferocity that's both impressive and terrifying. She's talking with her mouth full, bits of food flying everywhere. I'm doing my best not to gag, sipping my coffee and wondering how long I have to stay before it's polite to leave. Between bites, she's telling me about her rap career plans. She's got it all figured out. Her stage name Little Outer, her first album, straight out of suburbia. Even her signature look, which apparently involves a lot of gold chains and grills. I'm nodding, wondering how my mom could have possibly thought this was a good match. Just when I think it can't get worse, Olivia decides it's time for another performance. She stands up, nearly knocking over the table, and starts rapping. It's a mix of Drake lyrics and what I assume are her own creations. The other diners are staring, some amused, others horrified. I'm sinking lower in my seat, trying to become invisible. She's really getting into it now, waving her arms around, nearly hitting a waiter. Her voice is getting louder with each verse, and I swear the windows are starting to rattle. I cast the eye of our waitress, who gives me a sympathetic look. I mouth, "Check please," and she nods, rushing off. Finally, Olivia finishes her performance. There's a moment of stunned silence before a few confused people start clapping. She bows dramatically, almost losing her balance, before plopping back down with a satisfied grin. "That's just a taste of what Lil O's got in store for the world," she says, reaching for her milkshake. I'm about to make up some excuse to leave when she drops another bombshell. "So, dog, you ready to meet my crew? They're just around the corner, and I told them all about you. They can't wait to give you the official initiation." My blood runs cold. Initiation. Crew, what have I gotten myself into? Before I can respond, she's already pulling out her phone, texting rapidly. "They'll be here in 5, homie. Get ready for a wild night." I'm panicking now, looking around for escape routes. The waitress returns with a check, and I've never been so grateful to see a bill in my life. I throw some cash on the table, probably way too much, and start stammering about how I just remembered an important thing I have to do. Olivia looks disappointed, but then her phone buzzes. "No worries, dog. My crew's here anyway, maybe next time." She stands up, giving me another complicated handshake that I fumble through. As I'm rushing to my car, I see a group of guys in baggy clothes approaching the diner. They're all throwing up the same gang signs Olivia was using earlier. I won't stick around to see the reunion, peeling out of the parking lot like I'm a getaway car. I make it home in record time, still trying to process what just happened. My mom's waiting up, eager for details. I open my mouth, ready to unleash the whole crazy story, but then I stop. How do you begin to explain something like that? "It didn't work out," I say simply, heading to my room. Behind me, I hear Mum sigh and mutter something about trying again next week. I've never locked my bedroom door so fast in my life. I was feeling pretty lonely, like all my friends were coupled up, and here I was single as ever. That's when I came across Tom's profile. Holy cow, this guy was gorgeous. With a smile that could melt butter. I swiped right faster than you can say. Desperate. And wouldn't you know it, we matched. We started chatting, and let me tell you, Tom seemed perfect. He was funny, smart, and we had tons in common. We messaged back and forth for a couple of weeks. I was totally smitten. I was practically planning our wedding in my head. Crazy, right? Finally, we decided to meet up. Tom suggested this cute little cafe downtown, and I was all for it. I spent hours getting ready, trying on every outfit I owned. I wanted to look perfect for Mr. Perfect. So I get to the cafe, and I spot Tom right away. He looked even better in person, if that's possible. My heart was doing backflips as I walked over to his table. But as soon as I said hi, things went south real quick. Tom looked me up and down with this weird expression, like he'd just bitten into a lemon or something. Then he hit me with the most insulting thing I've ever heard on a first date. He actually said, "Oh, I thought maybe you'd look prettier in person." Can you believe that? I was so shocked I couldn't even speak. I should have turned around and walked right out of that cafe. but I guess I was too stunned to think straight. So, like an idiot, I sat down. Tom didn't even apologize or try to backtrack. Instead, he just launched into small talk like he hadn't just insulted me to my face. We ordered coffee, and I was still trying to process what had happened when Tom dropped another bomb. He leaned in real close and asked, "Have you ever thought about plastic surgery?" I nearly choked on my latte. Who asked that on a first date? Or ever for that matter? I finally found my voice and asked if he thought I was ugly. Big mistake. Tom completely lost it. He started yelling about how he was doing charity work by even going on a date with me. The whole cafe was staring at us, and I wanted to crawl under the table and die. That was it. I grabbed my purse and bolted out of there, trying not to cry in front of everyone. But get this, Tom actually followed me outside. He was all apologetic, saying he had a bad day and didn't mean what he said. I was still so upset and confused that I just stood there listening to him. Looking back, I can't believe I didn't just tell him to get lost and go home. Instead, I let him talk me into giving him another chance. I know, what was I thinking? But he was seriously so good looking, and I guess I was hoping maybe he really was just having an off day or something. So, Tom says he wants to make it up to me with a surprise date. He tells me to meet him at this address the next evening, and like an idiot, I agree. I spent all day getting ready, thinking maybe this time would be different. When I showed up at the meeting spot, Tom was there waiting. He seemed all excited about his surprise and led me down the street. We walked for a while, and I started to get a weird feeling in my stomach. Like, where was he taking me? Then we turned a corner, and I saw it. A hospital. Not a restaurant, not a movie theater. A freaking hospital. I was so confused, I just stood there staring at the building while Tom grinned like he'd just won the lottery. That's when he dropped the bomb. He'd made me an appointment for a consultation. A plastic surgery consultation. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This guy had actually brought me to a hospital to get a quote on fixing my face. I don't even remember what I said to him. I just turned around and ran. I literally ran all the way home. As soon as I got there, I blocked his number, deleted the app, and cried for like an hour straight. Was I really that ugly? Did I need plastic surgery? I spent days analyzing every little flaw in the mirror, wondering if Tom was right. But then I got angry. Like, who did this guy think he was? He'd seemed so perfect online, but in person, he was a total nightmare. I started wondering if his profile pics were even real, or if he used some kind of filter or something. I decided to do some digging. I had his full name and knew where he worked from our chats. So I did a little social media stalking. And guess what? The pictures on his dating profile were definitely not recent. I found older photos where he looked way different, like way less attractive. It hit me then. This guy was probably using old pictures to lure in girls, then knitting them to make them feel insecure. It was like some weird pickup artist tactic or something. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. He probably figured if he could make girls feel bad about themselves, they'd be desperate for his approval. Well, joke's on him because I wasn't falling for it. Yeah, he messed with my head for a while, but in the end, I realized the problem was all him. I might not be a supermodel, but I'm not ugly, and I definitely don't need plastic surgery. I thought about reporting him to the dating app, but honestly, I just wanted to forget the whole thing ever happened. So I deleted the app, blocked Tom on all social media, and decided to take a break from dating for a while. It took some time, but eventually I started feeling like myself again. I stopped obsessing over my appearance and remembered that I'm actually pretty awesome, flaws and all. And you know what? The next time I decide to try online dating, I'm going to trust my gut. If something feels off, I'm out of there. It was a total disaster from start to finish, but at least I learned something from it. And hey, it makes for a pretty wild story to tell at parties, right? Holy crap, I need to get this off my chest. Last night was probably the most mortifying experience of my entire life, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around how my own mother thought this was okay. Who sets their daughter up with their nephew? Like, seriously. So here's what went down. I've been single for about 8 months now after breaking up with my ex, and my mom's been absolutely relentless about getting me back in the dating game. Every phone call, every visit, it's always "I know someone perfect for you," or "You're not getting any younger, sweetie." Typical mom stuff. Usually, I just roll my eyes and change the subject, but this time she was different. She seemed really excited about this guy she wanted to set me up with. She kept going on about how he's successful, good-looking, and has a great sense of humor. Said he works in finance. Should have been my first red flag. Half my family works in finance, lives in the city, and would be perfect for me. After weeks of her persistent nagging, I finally gave in. I mean, what's the worst that could happen, right? Oh boy, was I in for a surprise. She set up the whole thing. Dinner at Bella Italia, that fancy new Italian place downtown. I spent ages getting ready, did my hair up nice, put on my favorite dress, even bought new heels. I was actually kind of excited, like maybe Mom actually found someone decent for once. I got to the restaurant a few minutes late. Traffic was mental, and the host pointed me to a table where someone was already sitting. As I walked over, my brain started doing this weird thing where it was like, hey, that guy looks familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. Then I got closer, and I swear my heart stopped. It was Jake, my cousin Jake. The same Jake who pushed me into our grandparents' pool when I was 12. The same Jake who I see at every single family gathering. The same Jake who literally gave the speech at my sister's wedding last year, just sitting there looking equally horrified as he recognized me. The moment our eyes met, it was like time froze. We both just stood there staring at each other like idiots while my brain tried to process what was happening. I couldn't even move. Like, what do you do in that situation? Run, scream, pretend you don't know each other. Eventually, I sat down because my legs were about to give out, and we just sat there in the most uncomfortable silence ever. The waiter came over, probably thinking we were having some lover's quarrel or something, and asked if we wanted drinks. I ordered the strongest wine they had, and Jake got a beer. We both needed it. We tried to figure out how this happened. Turns out, my mom had told him she knew this lovely girl who would be perfect for him, but never mentioned it was me. And get this, she told him I was a teacher. I'm an accountant. And that I loved hiking. I hate the outdoors. She basically made up a whole different person. The whole dinner was just pure awkwardness. We couldn't even look at each other properly. Every time our eyes met, we'd both quickly look away like we'd seen something horrifying. The couple at the next table kept giving us weird looks because we were acting so strange. We tried to make conversation, but what do you talk about when you're on an accidental date with your cousin? We already knew everything about each other. We ended up talking about how messed up the whole situation was and trying to figure out if our mum/aunt had actually lost her mind. The food came, but I couldn't eat. My stomach was in knots, and every bite felt like I was forcing it down. Jake wasn't doing much better. He was just pushing his pasta around his plate, probably wishing he was anywhere else. The romantic candle in the middle of the table felt like it was mocking us. We didn't even make it to dessert. After about 45 minutes of pure torture, we decided to call it quits. We split the bill, because this definitely wasn't a date, and practically ran out of there. Standing outside the restaurant, we just looked at each other and burst out laughing because what else could we do? It was either laugh or cry at that point. Now I'm sitting here, still in my dress from last night, trying to figure out how to confront my mom about this. Jake texted earlier saying he's already called his mom, my aunt, to tell her what happened, and apparently she's giving my mom an earful about it. Good. I've got about 50 messages from friends asking how my amazing blind date went, but I can't even begin to explain this mess. How do you tell people your mom tried to set you up with your own cousin? This isn't the kind of story you want getting around. Think I'm just gonna order takeout, watch some Netflix, and try to forget this ever happened. At least until the next family gathering, where this will probably become the story everyone tells for years to come. Fantastic. So here I am, nervously checking my phone every 2 seconds, when this guy walks up. He's tall, kind of scruffy looking, and wearing a wrinkled button-down that's seen better days. Jacob. I ask, trying to sound cheerful. He just grunts and nods, then brushes past me into the restaurant. Great start, right? We get seated, and I'm trying my best to strike a conversation. So, how do you know Minnie's boyfriend? I ask. Jacob mumbles something about college, then whips out his phone and starts texting. I'm sitting there like an idiot, trying to fill the awkward silence by rambling about the menu. The waiter comes by, and Jacob barely looks up from his phone to order. I go for the cheapest pasta dish, suddenly not feeling very hungry. As soon as the waiter leaves, I notice Jacob's eyes keep darting to the bar. There's a group of girls there, laughing and having a good time. Meanwhile, I'm stuck here with Mr. Personality. Our appetizers arrive, and Jacob finally puts his phone down. I think, okay, maybe this is turning around. Nope. He starts talking about his ex-girlfriend, who apparently looks just like one of the girls at the bar. He goes on and on about how she ripped his heart out and how he can't trust women anymore. I'm sitting there, fork halfway in my mouth, wondering if I'm being punked. As the night drags on, Jacob gets more and more obnoxious. He orders a bottle of wine, even though I tell him I'm driving. He insists, giving me this weird, intense look that makes my skin crawl. He starts making gross comments about my body, asking if I'm as fun in bed as I look. I'm shrinking in my seat, praying for the ground to swallow me whole. By the time our main courses arrive, Jacob's on his third glass of wine and getting louder by the minute. He's telling me all about his ex's betrayal in graphic detail, complete with hand gestures that nearly knock over our water glasses. I try to change the subject, asking about his job or hobbies, but he always brings it back to his ex. I excuse myself to go to the bathroom, hoping to get a moment of peace. In the stall, I text Mady, begging her to call me with an emergency so I can bail. But my phone dies right after I hit send. Just my luck, right? When I get back to the table, Jacob's moved his chair closer to mine. He puts his hand on my thigh, and I nearly jump out of my skin. I move his hand away, telling him I'm not comfortable, but he just laughs it off. "Don't be such a prude," he says, leaning in close. His breath reeks of wine and garlic. I'm trying to figure out how to get out of this nightmare when Jacob suddenly stands up, swaying slightly. "I gotta take a leak," he announces, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. As he stumbles towards the restroom, I seriously consider making a run for it. But my purse is still on the chair, and I can't leave without it. Jacob comes back, looking even more disheveled than before. He's got this weird glint in his eye as he sits down, like he just had some brilliant idea. "Hey," he says, leaning in close again. "Want to get out of here. My place is just around the corner." I tell him no, that I should be getting home. He doesn't take it well. "Come on, don't be a tease," he says, grabbing my wrist. "You've been leading in all night." I pull away, feeling panic rising in my chest. I tell him I haven't been leading him on, that I'm just not interested. He scoffs, muttering something about stuck-up bitches under his breath. The waiter chooses that moment to bring the bill. I reach for my wallet, ready to pay my share and get the hell out of there. But Jacob beats me to it, snatching up the bill with a smirk. "Oh no," he says, patting his pockets. "Forgot my wallet. It's your paying tonight, sweetheart. Equality and all that, right?" I'm fuming, but I just want this nightmare to end. I slap my card down and sign the receipt as fast as I can. As we're leaving, Jacob stumbles over to the bar and starts chatting up one of the girls he's been eyeing all night. I take this chance to make a break for it, speed walking towards the exit. But Jacob catches up to me in the parking lot. "Hey, where you going?" He slurs, grabbing my arm. Night's still young. I pull away, telling him I'm going home. He gets this weird look in his eyes, all dark and angry. "Come on, don't be a tease," he says, reaching for me again. I'm full on panicking now, fumbling for my keys. Jacob's between me and my car, swaying slightly but still blocking my path. "You got too much to drink," he says, trying to grab my keys. "I'll drive." Heart pounding, I clutch my keys tight and shove past him, practically diving into my car. I lock the doors just as Jacob reaches for the handle. He's banging on the window, yelling something I can't make out. I start the engine and peel out of there, hand shaking so bad I can barely steer. I drive around for a while, too shaken to go straight home. When I finally calm down enough to check my phone, I see a missed call from Mady and a string of texts from Jacob. I ignore his messages and call Mady back, telling her everything through tears. The next day, Jacob's texts turn nasty when I don't respond. He calls me stuck up, a tease, saying I let him on. I block his number without replying. I'm still shaken up, jumping at every noise and double-checking my locks. I can't stop thinking about what might have happened if I hadn't gotten away from him in that parking lot. I'm about to share the wildest, most disturbing blind date story you've ever heard. Trust me, you're not ready for this one. So, it all started when I matched with this guy named Harry on a dating app. He seemed decent enough, with a quirky bio and some pretty normal pics. Little did I know I was in for the shock of my life. We decided to meet up at this new, upscale restaurant downtown. I walked in looking all cute and stuff, ready to make a great first impression. And then I saw him. Harry looked nothing like his profile pics, like he used a time machine to grab photos from a decade ago. But hey, I'm not one to judge based on appearances, so I figured I'd give him a chance. As soon as we sat down, things started getting weird. Harry had this nervous energy about him, constantly fidgeting and glancing around like he was expecting someone to jump out from behind a potted plant. I tried to break the ice with some small talk, but he just gave me these short, distracted answers. And then, out of nowhere, he hawked a massive loogie right onto the floor beside our table. I'm talking a full-on, no-holds-barred spit bomb. I was so shocked I couldn't even react. But before I could say anything, Harry hit me with the most ridiculous excuse I've ever heard. Sorry about that, I've got this condition called immature saliva glands. Can't control it sometimes. I'm no medical expert, but I'm pretty sure that's not a thing. Still, I didn't want to be rude, so I just nodded along like I bought it. Oh, how I would come to regret that decision. For the next hour, Harry continued to spit on the floor every few minutes like he was marking his territory. The waitstaff kept shooting us dirty looks, and I could feel the other diners' judgment boring into my soul. I wanted to disappear, to melt into my chair and become one with the upholstery. But wait, it gets worse. When our food arrived, Harry started talking with his mouth full, spraying bits of half-chewed steak across the table like some kind of gross confetti cannon. And guess what? He blamed that on his condition too. Apparently, his immature saliva glands made it hard for him to chew like a normal human being. By this point, I was ready to fake a sudden onset of food poisoning just to escape. I had my phone out on the table, frantically texting my best friend to call me with a fake emergency. But before I could hit send, Harry took things to a whole new level of disturbing. He picked up his water glass, took a big gulp, and then just let the water dribble out of his mouth and down his chin like a malfunctioning fountain. I watched in horror as it cascaded onto his shirt, leaving a damp, darkened trail. And he had the nerve to laugh it off, saying, "Whoops, my glands are really acting up tonight." That was the final straw. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up so fast my chair nearly toppled over, mumbled some half-baked excuse, and bolted for the exit. I could feel Harry's eyes on my back as I practically sprinted out of the restaurant, but I didn't dare look back. Once outside, I gulped in the cool night air, trying to steady my racing heart. I called an Uber and spent the entire ride home replaying the nightmare in my head, wondering if it had really happened or if I just hallucinated the whole thing. The next day, I woke up to a string of texts from Harry, apologizing for his behavior and begging for a second chance. He claimed his condition only acted up when he was nervous, and he promised to make it up to me. I blocked his number faster than you can say immature saliva glands. But the story doesn't end there. Oh no, it gets even more twisted. A few days later, I was scrolling through my social media feed when I came across a local news article. The headline read, "Man arrested for disturbing the peace and unsanitary behavior at local restaurants." And there staring back at me from the mugshot was none other than Harry himself. Turns out, he'd been pulling this stunt all over town, grossing out unsuspecting dates with his spitting and dribbling routine. The article hinted at some kind of bizarre fetish or compulsion, but I didn't want to know the details. I was just grateful I'd escaped when I did. Looking back, I can't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. It's definitely a story I'll be telling for years to come, even if it does make my skin crawl every time I think about it. But one thing's for sure. I'll never ignore my gut instincts on a date again. If something feels off, I'll out the door faster than Harry can say, immature saliva glands. So there you have it, folks. The most disturbing, jaw-dropping blind date story you'll ever hear. If you got a weak stomach, I hope you didn't read this over lunch. And if you're currently in the dating scene, Godspeed. May your matches be normal and your dates be saliva-free. The blind date was supposed to be a lighthearted way to get back into the dating scene after my messy breakup. But from the moment Food walked through that restaurant door, I had a gut feeling something was deeply wrong. She was pretty in a very deliberate way, makeup perfectly applied, tight dressed, showing just enough skin to be alluring, blonde hairstyle immaculately. But her eyes, those bright blue eyes, had an intensity that made my stomach twist into knots. They were the eyes of a predator sizing of its prey. "I'm so glad we finally get to meet in person," she purred as she slid into the booth across from me, her voice low and seriously sweet. "I've been looking forward to this for so long." Red flag number one. We'd only matched on that dating app yesterday, but I laughed it off, assuming she was just being flirtatious. As the waiter arrived with water and menus, she stared at me unblinkingly like a snake watching a mouse. "So, tell me a little about yourself," I said awkwardly, trying to break the strange tension. "What do you do for work?" She rattled off some vague corporate job title, but I couldn't focus on her words. My gaze was drawn to her hands, long, elegant fingers tapping rhythmically on the table. Dark red nail polish glinted under the low light, the same shade as blood. I shook my head slightly, telling myself I was being paranoid. Just typical first date jitters. I forced myself to make small talk as our meals arrived, laughing at her jokes and trying to ignore the way she kept licking her lips whenever our eyes met. "You have the most gorgeous eyes," she murmured halfway through the main course, one perfectly manicured hand trailing up my arm. "They're such a unique gray blue. I could just drown in them." I pulled away sharply, my appetite suddenly gone. The way she looked at me made me feel like a piece of meat being sized up. Red flag number 2. 3 strikes and I was out of there. To my relief, the check arrived and I made a show of pulling out my wallet. I would pay, leave my excuses about an early morning, and get the hell out of Dodge. This woman was giving me Survivor Guy vibes. But when I opened my wallet, a chill ran down my spine. My driver's license was gone. Looking for this? An eerily familiar voice breathed in my ear as something hard and plastic pressed against my back. I turned slowly to find Phoebe standing behind me, my ID clasped in one hand, that same cruel smirk on her face. In her other hand glinted the unmistakable blade of a knife, small but undoubtedly razor sharp. "Don't make a scene, darling," she hissed as I opened my mouth to call for help. That would simply ruin all the fun we're about to have together. Adrenaline surged through me as I realized this woman was completely unhinged. She gestured with the knife for me to get up, and I had no choice but to obey, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it thrumming in my ears. With the knife digging into my back, she frog-marched me out of the crowded restaurant and across the parking lot to an older set-in I didn't recognize. I briefly considered making a run for it, but the wild look in her eyes warned me she wouldn't hesitate to bury that blade in my back. The second I climbed into the passenger seat, she was on me. The knife clattered to the floor as she straddled my lap, pinning me against the door with surprising strength. Up close, I could smell her sickly sweet perfume, the same vanilla scent my ex always wore. "Did you really think you could get away from me that easily?" She ran a finger down my cheek almost tenderly. "After all the effort I went through to find you." Panic rose like bile in my throat as her words sank in. This woman, this complete stranger, had been watching me, studying me. That was why she knew all those seemingly innocuous details about me that I certainly hadn't shared on a dating app. Phoebe, if that was even her real name, was completely deranged. And now I was trapped alone with her, my chances of getting out of this in one piece dimming by the second. "Please," I managed to choke out, struggling uselessly against her vice-like grip. "I don't know what you want from me, but you're making a terrible mistake. Just let me go and I swear I won't tell anyone." She threw her head back and laughed, the sound devoid of any real humor. "Don't you see? You're my soulmate, my destiny. We're meant to be together forever." Her fingertips trailed down my chest, and I saw with dawning horror that they were tracing the puckered scar left from my bypass surgery 3 years ago. She knew things about me that no casual observer could possibly know. "Please don't do this," I begged, hating how pathetic and small my voice sounded. "Whatever twisted fantasy you've built up in your head, I guarantee you're wrong about me. We've only just met." "I know everything about you," she growled, seizing a fistful of my hair and wrenching my head back painfully. "Your favorite books, your morning routines, your little quirks and habits. I love all of those things about you. And once you love me back just as fiercely as I love you, we'll be perfect together." Her grip tightened in my hair until I cried out in pain. Reason and logic weren't going to work here. This woman, no, this creature, was utterly disconnected from reality. There was only one way I was getting out of this car alive. As Phoebe leaned in closer, her hot breath on my cheek, I braced myself for what I had to do. My life depended on it. At the last second, as her lips brushed against mine, I jerked my head forward as hard as I could. The crunch of bone and cartilage was sickening as my forehead collided with her nose. The rest was a blur of screaming, struggling, and finally managing to throw her off me and tumble out of the car. Her hands clawed at my clothes as I tore myself free, leaving long crimson streaks across my skin. I ran as hard and fast as I could while she screeched and cursed at me from the parking lot. I'll never forget the demented look of rage and betrayal on Phoebe's face, her perfect mask finally shattered to reveal the monster underneath. Even with her nose gushing blood, she looked more animal than human in that moment, all because of my rejection of her twisted romantic delusions. I sprinted for what felt like miles, not stopping until I reached the safety of a busy street where I could call for help. looking over my shoulder the whole time, gasping for air, half expecting that unstoppable force of nature to come barreling around the corner after me at any second. Who was food, really? What set her so irrevocably adrift from reality that she was willing to get me, imprison me, and someone for me? The thought of what could have happened if I hadn't escaped her clutches makes me want to vomit. So consider this a warning, a primal scream into the void. Out there among us, hiding in plain sight and appearing perfectly normal, are humans more dangerous and unhinged than any monster from myth or campfire tale. And I'll never be able to unsee the depravity their fragile psyches are capable of unleashing. Sleep well, and maybe say an extra prayer that you never crossed paths with one of them on a blind date. Okay, this one is for the mature lot. Man, oh man, you think I'm lying or pulling your legs, cause this story will give you secondhand embarrassment. I never thought a blind date could turn into a real-life horror show, but that's exactly what happened when I met this one narc, Parker. What started as an awkward coffee meetup spiraled into a nightmare, laughable ordeal that left me questioning humanity and my own judgment. It all began one evening. Sometime in November, I believe, my bestie from school, Fiona, had been pestering me for weeks to meet this amazing guy she knew from work. After much convincing, I reluctantly agreed to a casual coffee date. He's a bit shorter than you, Fiona warned, but he's got a great personality. Oh, if only I had known what I was walking into. I arrived at the trendy downtown cafe a few minutes early, snagging a cozy corner table. The place was buzzing with the after-work crowd, and I found myself people watching to calm my nerves. That's when I spotted him. He was a stocky guy with a receding hairline, unbuttoned Ralph Lauren polo in this bright pink color, and he was confidently striding through the door like he owned the place. Parker spotted me and made his way over, his eyes darting around the room as if he was on high alert. As he got closer, I realized just how short he really was, maybe 5'5" at best. But it wasn't his height that struck me. It was the way he carried himself, with an air of smug superiority that seemed completely unwarranted. "Hey there, gorgeous," he drawled, sliding into the seat across from me. "I hope you haven't been waiting long. I know it must have been torture not having me here." He winked, and I felt my stomach churn. From the moment he sat down, Parker's attention was everywhere but on me. His beady eyes roamed the cafe, lingering on every woman who walked by. He'd make not-so-subtle comments about their appearances, sometimes even letting out a low whistle. I tried to steer the conversation back to normal topics, but it was like talking to a thirsty teenager. "So, Parker, what do you do for work?" I asked, desperate for any sign of some sort of normal conversation. "Huh. Oh, I'm into anime and drawing and stuff, but haven't made money yet," he replied distractedly, his gaze fixed on a blonde who just walked in. "Man, would you look at the legs on that one? Bet she'd wrap those around me in a heartbeat." I was mortified. Not only was his behavior incredibly disrespectful to me, but it was also making the other patrons visibly uncomfortable. A group of women at a nearby table kept shooting us dirty looks, clearly having overheard some of Parker's crude remarks. As if things couldn't get any worse, Parker suddenly declared he needed to use the restroom. He stood up, adjusting himself in a way that made me want to crawl under the table and die. I seriously considered making a run for it while he was gone, but some morbid curiosity kept me glued to my seat. When Parker returned a few minutes later, I immediately noticed something was off. There was a suspicious stain on the front of his shorts and a look of smug satisfaction on his face. It took me a moment to process what I was seeing, and when realization hit, I felt physically ill. "Did you just... in the bathroom?" I sputtered, unable to even finish the sentence. Parker had the audacity to wink at me. What can I say? All these beautiful ladies got me a little excited. Sometimes a man's got to take care of business, you know. I was speechless. This guy had actually done that in the public restroom and then came back to our date like nothing had happened. It was official. This was the worst date in the history of dating. But the horror show wasn't over yet. As I sat there trying to process the sheer absurdity of the situation, Parker leaned in close. His breath reeked of coffee and desperation as he whispered, "So, what do you say we get out of here and head back to my place? I've got a king-sized bed and some moves that'll blow your mind." That was it. The final straw. I stood up so abruptly that I knocked over my half-full coffee, sending a cascade of lukewarm coffee across the table. "You're disgusting," I hissed, grabbing my purse and phone. "Stay away from me, you creep." As I stormed towards the exit, I could hear Parker calling after me. "Come on, baby. Don't be like that." You know you want this." I burst out of the cafe, gulping in the cool evening air like a drowning person finally breaking the surface. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for my phone, desperate to call Fiona and give her a piece of my mind for setting me up with such a revolting human being. As I waited for her to pick up, I noticed a commotion back at the cafe. Through the large front windows, I could see Parker being confronted by a group of angry women, the same ones who'd been giving us dirty looks earlier. One of them was gesturing wildly at the stain on his shorts, while another seemed to be on the phone with what I could only assume was the police. Part of me wanted to stick around and watch karma unfold, but I'd had more than enough excitement for one evening. I hailed a cab and headed home, vowing to never again let myself be talked into a blind date. I heard through some friends and family that Parker had been banned from the cafe and was facing potential charges for public harassment. Fiona was mortified when I told her what happened, swearing up and down that she had no idea he was such a creep. She just kept saying sorry. As for me, well, I've developed a newfound appreciation for Harry Potter under a warm blanket and my cat. Sure, being single has its downsides, but after my encounter with Parker, I'll take loneliness over that kind of excitement any day of the week. Trust me. My dad came in and said, "Son, you can't spend another weekend alone. I've got the perfect girl for you." Before I can even protest, he's rambling on about his best friend's daughter, how she's smart, beautiful, and single. I'm skeptical, but he's so excited I figure what the hell. Maybe this is the universe throwing me a bone. Fast forward to Saturday evening, and I'm standing outside this swanky Italian restaurant, tugging at my collar and wondering if I should have worn a tie. I spot her through the window, and my jaw nearly hits the pavement. She's decked out in a dress that probably cost more than my car, with enough bling to light up Times Square. I glance down at my button-up shirt and jeans, suddenly feeling like I showed up to a black tie event in my pajamas. I take a deep breath and head inside, trying to channel my inner smooth operator. As I approach the table, she looks up from her phone, and I swear the temperature drops 10 degrees. Her eyes scan me from head to toe, and I can practically hear her internal sigh of disappointment. "Hi, I'm Jake." I manage to squeak out, extending my hand. She barely touches it, like she's afraid she'll catch something. "Cassandra," she replies, her voice dripping with disinterest. Great start. I slide into my seat, racking my brain for something clever to say. But before I can even open my mouth, she's flagging down the waiter and ordering the most expensive wine on the menu. I gulp, already seeing my bank account dwindling. The next hour is like pulling teeth. I try every conversation starter in the book: work, hobbies, favorite movies. But Cassandra's responses are shorter than Ignat's attention span. She's more interested in her phone than anything I have to say. I'm starting to wonder if I've somehow offended her in a past life. When our food arrives, I'm relieved to have something to focus on besides her icy stare. I dig into my pasta while Cassandra picks at her salad like it's personally insulted her. Just as I'm thinking things can't get any more awkward, she finally decides to grace me with her full attention. "So, Jake," she says, leaning forward. For a split second, I think maybe we're turning a corner. "What do you do for a living?" I explain that I work in it, feeling a little proud as I talk about my recent promotion. But as I speak, I watch her face fall faster than a building in an earthquake. "Oh," she says, not even trying to hide her disappointment. "I thought my father said you were in finance or something." And just like that, I'm demoted from potential date to something she scraped off her designer shoe. But wait, it gets better. Cassandra launches into a monologue about her ex-boyfriend, some hotshot Wall Street type who used to fly her to Paris for lunch. I'm sitting there, fork suspended halfway to my mouth, wondering if I've accidentally stumbled into an episode of Rich Kids of Beverly Hills. Just when I think the night can't possibly get any worse, Cassandra drops a bomb that makes me wish the floor would open up and swallow me whole. She starts talking about this Van Cleef and Arpels bracelet she's been dying to have. At first, I think she's just making conversation, finally, but then I realize she's looking at me expectantly. "It's only $1,000, she says, like she's talking about pocket change. "Daddy usually buys me whatever I want, but he's being so unreasonable about this. You'll get it for me, won't you?" I nearly choke on my wine. Is she serious? We've known each other for all of 90 minutes, and she's asking me to drop $1,000 on her. I stammer something about it being a bit out of my budget, and her face clouds over like I've just told her Christmas is canceled. "Wow," she scoffs. "I can't believe how cheap you are. Any real man would be happy to buy me a gift." I'm speechless, wondering if I've somehow been transported to an alternate universe where this is normal behavior. The rest of the dinner is a blur of awkward silences and thinly veiled insults. Cassandra orders dessert and another bottle of wine, clearly determined to max out my credit card if she can't get her bracelet. When the bill comes, I'm pretty sure I feel a small part of my soul die. As we're leaving, Cassandra doesn't even bother with a goodbye. She just clicks away on her stilettos, leaving me with a lighter wallet and a bruised ego. I stand there for a moment, wondering how on earth my dad thought we'd be a good match. The next morning, I wake up to a series of texts from Cassandra. For a split second, I think maybe she's apologizing. Nope, she sent me links to the bracelet, asking when I'm going to order it. I block her number faster than you can say, gold digger. Later that day, my dad calls, all excited to hear about the date. I consider sugarcoating it, but decide honesty is the best policy. I tell him everything. The cold shoulder, the ridiculous bracelet demand, the whole disaster. There's a long pause on the other end of the line, and then my dad bursts out laughing. "Oh, son," he wheezes between chuckles, "I'm so sorry. I had no idea she was like that." Her father always made her sound so sweet. We spent the next hour swapping horror stories about bad dates, and I realized that even though the date was a disaster, at least I got a good story out of it. So there you have it, my blind date from hell. Cassandra might not have gotten her $1,000 bracelet, but she definitely left me with a tale I'll be dining out on for years to come. And hey, at least now I know to be more specific when I tell my dad what I'm looking for at a date. Not a spoiled princess is definitely going on the list. It all started last month when I was chilling at home, scrolling through my phone, bored out of my mind. That's when I stumbled across this new blind date app everyone was raving about. Little did I know I was about to embark on the most awkward adventure of my life. So I downloaded this app, right? It's got this whole mysterious vibe going on. You fill out your profile, but you don't get to see who you're matched with until you meet in person. Sounds exciting, I thought. Man, was I in for a surprise. I spent a good hour setting up my profile, trying to make myself sound interesting without coming off as a total dweeb. I throw in some of my hobbies, hiking, playing guitar, badly, and my obsession with true crime podcasts. You know, the usual stuff. I upload a couple of pics, nothing too fancy, just me looking somewhat put together. A few days go by, and I almost forget about the app. Then boom, I get a notification. I've been matched with someone, and the app suggesting we meet at this cozy little coffee shop downtown. I'm feeling a mix of excitement and nerves, but mostly I'm just glad to have plans that don't involve binge watching another series on Netflix. The day of the date arrives, and I'm a mess. I change my outfit like 5 times, settling on a casual but nice button-down and jeans. I even trim my beard, which is a big deal for me. I head to the coffee shop, palms sweaty, heart racing. I get there early and grab a table near the window, figuring I can spot my date when they arrive. I'm sitting there, nervously tapping my foot when the bell over the door chimes. I look up, expecting to see a stranger, maybe someone cute and interesting. Instead, I feel like I've been punched in the gut. Walking through the door, looking just as excited and nervous as I had been moments ago, is my Aunt Susan. Now, let me give you some background here. Aunt Susan is my blood relative. She married my uncle when I was in high school, but they divorced a few years back. We've always gotten along well, and she's still close with the family. But seeing her walk into that coffee shop, realizing she's my blind date, it's like my brain short-circuited. For a split second, I considered diving under the table or making a run for it. But it's too late. Our eyes meet, and I watch as recognition dawns on her face. Her smile freezes, then slowly morphs into a look of pure horror that I'm sure mirrors my own. Time seems to slow down as Aunt Susan makes her way to my table. I swear I can hear the Jaws theme playing in my head. She sits down across from me, and we both just stare at each other, mouths opening and closing like fish out of water. "Hey," I finally manage to croak out, my voice sounding like I've swallowed a handful of gravel. Aunt Susan mumbles something that might be a greeting or possibly a prayer for the ground to open up and swallow her whole. I'm not sure which. We sit there in the most uncomfortable silence known to mankind. I'm suddenly hyper-aware of everything. The clinking of coffee cups, the chatter of other patrons, the fact that my palms are sweating so much I could probably fill a small swimming pool. I rack my brain for anything to say. But what do you talk about in this situation? The weather. The latest family gossip. The fact that we both apparently thought it was a good idea to join a blind dating app. Aunt Susan clears her throat, and for a moment, I think she's going to say something profound that will magically make this whole situation less weird. Instead, she just asks if I want coffee. I nod, grateful for any distraction. We both get up to order, moving like robots on autopilot. Standing in line, I catch snippets of conversation from other customers. It all sounds so normal, so blissfully unaware of the awkward nightmare unfolding right next to them. Back at the table, we sip our coffees in silence. I've never been so aware of the sound of my own swallowing before. It's excruciating. Finally, Aunt Susan breaks the silence. So, she says, her voice strained, how about the Yankees? I almost choke on my coffee. Neither of us even likes baseball. We stumble through a few minutes of the most painful small talk imaginable. We cover everything from the unseasonably warm weather to her new job to my cousin's recent graduation. Anything to avoid addressing the elephant in the room. As we're talking, I can't help but wonder how this even happened. What are the odds that out of all the people in this city, we get matched with each other? It's like the universe is playing some cosmic practical joke on us. I'm also struck by how different Aunt Susan looks outside of family gatherings. She's dressed up a bit, wearing makeup, her hair styled. It's weird seeing her in this context, and it makes the whole situation even more surreal. After what feels like an eternity, but is probably only about 15 minutes, we both seem to reach our breaking point simultaneously. We start making excuses about needing to leave, talking over each other in our haste to escape this nightmare. We stand up so quickly our chairs screech against the floor, drawing looks from nearby tables. Great, as if we needed more attention. We do this awkward dance by the door, both trying to leave first, but also trying to be polite. It's like a bizarre game of chicken, but instead of cars, it's two people desperate to get away from the most uncomfortable situation of their lives. Finally, we're outside. The fresh air hits me, and it's like I can breathe again for the first time since this whole ordeal began. So, see you at Thanksgiving. I say, immediately wanting to kick myself. Aunt Susan nods stiffly, and we both turn and speed walk in opposite directions. As I'm practically running home, my mind is racing. How am I going to face her at family gatherings now? What if she tells someone? Oh God, what if my parents find out? I get home and immediately delete the app from my phone. I briefly consider throwing my phone out the window for good measure, but decide that might be a bit extreme. The next few weeks are a blur of anxiety and avoiding family calls. I jump every time my phone rings, half expecting it to be Aunt Susan trying to talk about what happened. But there's nothing but silence from her end, which is both a relief and somehow makes the whole thing even more awkward. When Thanksgiving finally rolls around, I seriously consider faking a sudden, highly contagious illness. But I know I can't avoid my family forever, so I suck up and go. The moment I walk into my parents' house, I spot Aunt Susan across the room. Our eyes meet, and for a second, I'm right back in that coffee shop. But then she gives me a small, awkward smile and a nod, and I return it. It's not much, but it's something. A silent agreement to never, ever speak of what happened. It's a Friday night, and I'm scrolling through Tinder, bored out of my mind. Suddenly, this ad pops up for a blind date event they're hosting in my city. I'm thinking, what the hell, why not? Little did I know I was about to have the most terrifying night of my life. So I sign up for this thing, fill out some dumb questionnaire about my interests, and wait for the big night. When I get to the venue, it's actually pretty cool. They got it set up like speed dating, with a bunch of little tables and mood lighting. The organizers give us name tags and tell us we'll rotate every 10 minutes. The first few guys I talk to or whatever. Nothing special, but not total creeps either. But then I get to this one table, and as soon as I sit down, my stomach drops. This guy, let's call him Craig, is giving off some seriously weird vibes. He's all twitchy, and his eyes keep darting around the room like he's looking for someone. I try to start a normal conversation, asking him about his job and stuff, but he keeps steering things in a really dark direction. He's asking me if I believe in afterlife or if I've ever seen a dead body. I'm getting majorly creeped out, but I don't want to make a scene, so I just try to keep things light and wait for the timer to go off. When it's time to switch tables, Craig grabs my wrist and begs me to stay. He's going on about how we have a connection and how we're meant to be together. I manage to pull away and move on, but I can feel his eyes on me for the rest of the night. After the event, I'm grabbing my stuff to leave when Craig suddenly appears next to me. He starts rambling about how we're soulmates and how he wants to take me home right then. I tell him I'm not interested and try to walk away, but he follows me out of the building. That's when things get really scary. Craig starts getting more and more worked up, insisting that I come back to his place. When I say no again, he completely loses it. He's yelling about how I'm just like all the other ungrateful bitches who don't appreciate him, and how he's going to make me see how special he is. I'm freaking out, looking around for help, but the street's pretty much empty. I start walking faster, hoping to get to my car before things escalate, but Craig keeps pace with me, hitting louder and angrier with every step. Just as I'm about to break into a run, this group of people comes out of a nearby bar. Craig must realize he's outnumbered because he suddenly shuts up and disappears into the shadows. I sprint to my car, my hands shaking so bad I can barely get the key in the ignition. I drive home, constantly checking my rearview mirror to make sure I'm not being followed. When I finally get to my apartment, I lock all the doors and windows, then sit on my couch trying to calm down. I keep telling myself it's over, that Craig was just some weirdo who got too intense, but something in my gut tells me this isn't the end. The next day, I wake up to a flood of notifications on my phone. I've got messages on all my social media accounts from fake profiles, but I know it's Craig. He's saying all this creepy stuff about how we're meant to be together and how he's not going to let me go. I block the accounts, but new ones keep popping up. I'm getting ready for work when I notice this beat-up old car parked across the street. I've never seen it before, and something about it gives me the chills. I try to shake it off and head to work, but when I get home that evening, the car is still there. I catch a glimpse of someone ducking down in the driver's seat as I walk by. This goes on for days. The car's always there, and messages keep coming. I'm a nervous wreck, jumping at every little noise and constantly looking over my shoulder. I start varying my routine, taking different routes to work, and asking friends to come over so I won't be alone. About a week after the blind date event, I wake up to find a bunch of wilted flowers on my doorstep, along with a note that says, "Soon, my love." That's when I lose it. I call the cops and file a report, showing them all the creepy messages and telling them about the car that's been following me. The police take it seriously and start patrolling my neighborhood more often. They also advise me to stay with a friend for a few days, just to be safe. I pack a bag and head to my best friend's place, feeling a little better knowing I'm not alone. But Craig doesn't give up. He somehow finds out where my friend lives and starts sending stuff there too. Flowers, creepy notes, even a lock of hair that I'm terrified might be his. My friend and I are both freaking out at this point, wondering how the hell he's tracking me down. That's when we decide to set a trap. We come up with this plan to make Craig think I'm going to be at a certain place at a certain time. We tip off the cops, hoping they'll be able to catch him in the act. The night of the trap, I'm a nervous wreck. My friend and I are hiding out at her place while the cops stake out the location we told Craig about. Hours go by with no word, and I'm starting to think maybe he didn't fall for it. But then my phone rings. It's the police. They got Craig in custody. Apparently, he showed up at the location with a whole bunch of creepy stuff in his car. Rope, duct tape, a knife. I feel sick thinking about what he might have been planning. The cops tell me they're charging Craig with stalking and attempted kidnapping. They found evidence at his place that he'd been obsessing over me for weeks, even before the blind day event. He had pictures of me and information on my routine, everything. It turns out he'd hacked into the Tinder event database to get my personal info. I'm relieved that Craig's been caught, but I'm also completely shaken. I can't believe how close I came to something really terrible happening. The whole thing has left me paranoid and jumpy, and I know it's going to take a long time before I feel normal again. I've got a story that's gonna make your jaw drop. Seriously, what happened to me last weekend was so messed up. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. It all started with this new dating app everyone at school was buzzing about. Little did I know it would lead to the most awkward and disturbing situation of my life. So there I was bored out of my mind on a Friday night. My friends were all busy, and I was scrolling through social media when I kept seeing ads for this app. It was supposed to be like way better than Tinder or Bumble. The big selling point was this fancy algorithm that supposedly found your perfect match based on personality and interests, not just looks. I figured why not? I'm 18, single, and hey, maybe I'd meet someone cool. So I downloaded the app and spent like an hour setting up my profile. There were tons of questions about my hobbies, favorite books, music taste, all that stuff. It was pretty in-depth, which I guess is how they make those perfect matches. After I finished, I started swiping through potential matches. Most of them were okay, nothing special. But then I got this notification saying I had a 97% compatibility match. I was pretty curious, so I checked out the profile. The pictures were kind of blurry and artsy. You couldn't really see the guy's face clearly, but he seemed cute from what I could tell. His bio said he was 28, worked in education, and was looking for something casual. The age difference made me pause for a sec, but I figured 10 years wasn't that big a deal. We started chatting, and honestly, it was going great. He was funny, smart, and we had so much in common. We liked the same bands, had the same taste in movies, even shared some weird niche interests. It felt like we just clicked, you know. After messaging back and forth for a couple hours, he suggested meeting up for coffee the next day. I was hesitant at first, meeting someone from the internet and all that, but he was super understanding and said we could meet somewhere public in the afternoon. He really seemed to get my concerns and said all the right things to make me feel safe. So I agreed, and we made plans to meet at this cute little cafe downtown. I spent way too long getting ready on Saturday, changing my outfit like 5 times. I was nervous but also excited. When I got to the cafe, I grabbed a table near the back and waited, fidgeting with my phone. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps approaching. I looked up, expecting to see this cute 28-year-old I had been chatting with. Instead, I froze in complete shock. Standing there was Mr. Gordon, my 11th grade English teacher. I'm not exaggerating when I say my brain short-circuited. Mr. Gordon is like at least 40. He's been married forever and has 2 kids. There are family photos on his desk at school. What the hell is he doing here? For a second, I thought maybe it was just a crazy coincidence. But then he sat down across from me with this look of horror on his face. We both just stared at each other, completely stunned. Finally, Mr. Gordon started talking. He was stammering and tripping over his words, saying he had no idea it was me, that the app must have glitched, that this was all a huge mistake. But I could tell from his reaction that he knew exactly who he was meeting. He'd used fake pics and lied about his age, but the rest of his profile was real enough that the app matched us. I was freaking out inside but trying to keep it together. My mind was racing with questions. How long had he been doing this? Were there other students? What about his wife and kids? I felt sick to my stomach. Mr. Gordon kept rambling, saying he was going through a midlife crisis, that things with his wife weren't great, that he was lonely and made a stupid mistake. He was practically begging me not to tell anyone, saying it would ruin his life and career. I just sat there in shocked silence while he went on and on. Part of me wanted to scream and run out of there, but another part was weirdly fascinated in a morbid way. I mean, this was the guy who spent a whole semester lecturing us about morality and literature, and here he was trying to hook up with his students. The hypocrisy was mind-blowing. As Mr. Gordon kept talking, more details came out. He admitted he'd been using the app for a few months. He said it was the first student he matched with, but honestly, I'm not sure I believe that. He tried to justify it by saying he never meant to actually meet anyone, that it was just a fantasy thing. But obviously that wasn't true since he was sitting right in front of me. The whole time I was struggling to process what was happening. I kept thinking about all the times I'd been in his class, how I'd respected him as a teacher. Now I was seeing this whole other side of him, and it was so messed up. After what felt like forever, but was probably only 15 minutes, I finally snapped out of it. I told Mr. Gordon I had to go and practically ran out of the cafe. I could hear him calling after me, but I just kept walking. The rest of the weekend was a blur. I couldn't stop replaying the encounter in my head. I felt gross and violated even though nothing physical had happened. The fact that Mr. Gordon had seen my profile, knew it was me, and still agreed to meet up was so disturbing. I went back and forth on what to do. Should I report him, pretend it never happened? Tell my friends? I had no clue what the right move was. I was worried about the consequences for him, for his family, but also for me. Would people believe me? Would they somehow blame me? When Monday came, I was dreading going to school. I don't have Mr. Gordon's class anymore, but I knew I'd probably run into him in the halls. Sure enough, I saw him between second and third period. He gave me this desperate, pleading look. I just put my head down and speed walked past him. It's been a few days now, and I still don't know what to do. Every time I see Mr. Gordon at school, I get this sick feeling in my stomach. The whole situation is just so messed up and awkward. For now, I'm just trying to process it all. I deleted that stupid dating app, obviously, and I've been avoiding Mr. Gordon as much as possible. But it's not like I can avoid him completely. He's still a teacher at my school. I know I probably shouldn't be sharing this story. Mr. Gordon would freak if he knew, but I just had to tell someone, even anonymously. It's driving me crazy keeping it all to myself. So yeah, that's my completely insane, messed up blind date horror story. Still no idea what I'm gonna do about it. I'm sitting at a bar, my heart racing like I just ran a marathon. But this isn't your typical first date jitters. Nope, I'm watching my blind date get tackled by a SWAT team. Yeah, you heard that right. Let me rewind and tell you how I ended up in this mess. It all started last week when my bestie convinced me to try this new dating app. I was hesitant, but after a few glasses of wine, I thought, why not? Little did I know I was swiping my way into a real-life crime drama. I matched with this guy Jermaine. Tall, dark, and handsome. Totally my type. We chatted for a few days, and he seemed cool. Funny, charming, the whole package. So when he suggested meeting up at this trendy bar downtown, I was all in. I spent forever getting ready, trying to look hot, but not like I was trying too hard. I settled on my favorite little black dress and heels, did my makeup, and headed out feeling pretty good about myself. When I got to the bar, I spotted Jermaine right away. He looked even better in person, all muscles and perfect teeth. We grabbed a table and ordered drinks. At first, everything was great. We were laughing, flirting, having a good time. But then things started to get weird. Jermaine kept glancing around the bar like he was looking for someone. He seemed jumpy, flinching every time the door opened. I figured maybe he was just nervous, but something felt off. About an hour in, this sketchy-looking dude came up to our table. He whispered something to Jermaine, and suddenly Jermaine's whole vibe changed. He got all tense and agitated. He excused himself to go to the bathroom, but was gone for ages. When he finally came back, he was acting super strange. He kept checking his phone and looking towards the exits. I was starting to get freaked out and was thinking of bailing when all hell broke loose. There was this huge crash as the front door of the bar flew open. Suddenly, the place was swarming with cops in full tactical gear, guns drawn. They were yelling for everyone to get down on the ground. I was in total shock, my brain trying to process what was happening. That's when I saw Jermaine leap up from our table and make a run for it. But he didn't get far before two massive cops tackled him to the ground. I was lying face down on the gross, sticky bar floor, hands over my head, absolutely terrified. I could hear Jermaine struggling and cursing as they cuffed him. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. After what felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes, when the officers came over and helped me up. He started asking me all these questions about Jermaine and our date. I was still in shock, my hands shaking as I tried to explain that I barely knew the guy. We just met on a dating app. Turns out Jermaine wasn't just some normal dude looking for love. Oh no, he was a freaking drug kingpin who'd been on the run for months. The cops had gotten a tip he'd be at the bar that night. That sketchy guy who'd come to our table. One of Jermaine's associates, warning him the cops were closing in. I felt like such an idiot for not realizing something was up. Looking back, there were so many red flags. His nervousness, the weird friend, his appearing to the bathroom for so long. But I've been too caught up in the excitement of the date to see it. The cops took my statement and all my info. They assured me I wasn't in trouble, but man, I sure felt like I was. My head was spinning as I gathered up my stuff to leave. As I walked out of the bar on wobbly legs, I saw Jermaine being loaded into a police van. Our eyes met for a split second, and I felt this chill go down my spine. To think I'd been sitting across from a dangerous criminal all night, completely clueless. I was still in a daze as I got in my car. My phone was blowing up with texts from friends who'd seen the whole thing on the local news. Apparently, there had been cop cars and news vans outside the bar. When I got home, I poured myself a massive glass of wine and tried to calm down. I kept replaying the night over and over in my head. What if things had gone differently? What if Jermaine had taken me hostage or something when the cops showed up? I barely slept that night, jumping at every little noise. The next day, I woke up to find my face all over the local news and gossip sites. Woman's blind date ends in dramatic arrest, the headlines screamed. There were even blurry cell phone pics of me looking shell-shocked as I left the bar. My phone was going crazy with calls and texts from family and friends checking on me. I even got a few interview requests from local TV stations, which I ignored. The last thing I wanted was to relive the whole nightmare on camera. Over the next few days, more details about Jermaine came out. Turns out he was wanted in 3 states for drug trafficking and money laundering. He'd been living under a fake name and had profiles on a bunch of dating apps. The cops think he was using dates as cover to meet with his criminal contacts. I kept thinking about how easily things could have gone wrong. What if he decided to use me as a hostage? Or what if I'd gotten caught up in one of his drug deals without realizing it? The whole thing was like something out of a movie, except it was my real life. My friends keep telling me I should write a book or go on a talk show to tell my story. But honestly, I just want to forget the whole thing ever happened. I deleted all my dating apps and I'm taking a break from the dating scene for a while. It's been about a week now and I'm still pretty shaken up. I jump every time I hear sirens and I'm paranoid about meeting new people. I know logically that the chances of this happening again are basically zero, but it's hard to shake that fear. I did end up talking to a therapist, which has helped a bit. She says it's normal to feel anxious after such a traumatic experience and that it'll take time to process everything. From a normal Friday night to the middle of a police raid in the blink of an eye, I guess the moral of the story is, actually, you know what? There is no moral. Sometimes crazy stuff just happens and you gotta deal with it. All I know is, next time I decide to try online dating, I'm doing a full background check first. My buddy Mike wouldn't shut about this girl, Fiona, he knew from his yoga class. He kept saying we'd be perfect together, going on and on about how she was smart, funny, and drop-dead gorgeous. After weeks of him nagging me, I finally caved and agreed to meet her. Little did I know I was in for the wildest night of my life. So, the big night rolls around, and I'm feeling pretty good. I threw on my favorite shirt, the one that makes me look like I actually work out, and headed to this swanky new bar downtown. I spot Fiona right away. Mike wasn't lying, she's stunning. Long blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and legs for days. I'm thinking, damn, maybe Mike's not such an idiot after all. We grab a table and start chatting. Everything's going great at first. We're laughing, swapping stories, and I'm thinking this might actually turn into something. But then, about an hour in, things start to get weird. Fiona leans in close and starts telling me about her lifestyle. At first, I'm not sure what she means, but it quickly becomes clear that she's into some seriously kinky stuff. Now, no prude, but when she starts describing her dungeon, yes, an actual dungeon in her basement, I'm definitely feeling out of my depth. But that's not even the craziest part. Fiona casually mentions that she's looking for multiple partners. Not just for a one-time thing, mind you, but for a long-term polyamorous relationship. She's got this whole system figured out, talking about schedules and rules and stuff. I'm sitting there, trying to process all this information when she drops another bombshell. Turns out Fiona's already got 2 other partners, and they're both at the bar right now. She points them out, a tall, muscular dude by the jukebox and a petite redhead at the bar. Apparently, they're here to evaluate me and see if I'd be a good fit for their little group. At this point, I'm seriously considering making a run for it. But before I can come up with an excuse to leave, Fiona's other partners join us at the table. They start grilling me with all these personal questions, like what my kinks are and if I've ever been in a group relationship before. I'm feeling totally overwhelmed, but I don't want to be rude, so I try to answer as vaguely as possible. Just when I think things can't get any weirder, Fiona suggests we all go back to her place to get to know each other better. She's got this mischievous glint in her eye, and I know she's not talking about playing board games. I'm frantically trying to come up with an excuse to bail when the muscular dude, I think his name was Derek, puts his hand on my thigh and gives me this intense look. That's when I decided enough was enough. I mumbled something about having an early meeting the next day and practically sprinted out of the bar. I could hear Fiona calling after me, but I didn't look back. I just kept running until I was safely in a taxi heading home. But the night wasn't over yet. Oh no, it was about to get even crazier. As I'm sitting in the taxi, trying to catch my breath, my phone starts blowing up. It's Fiona sending me all these messages about how disappointed she is that I left and how she thinks we could have had something special. Then she starts sending pictures. Let's just say they were not safe for work. I'm trying to ignore the messages, but they keep coming. And then, to my horror, I realize she's somehow added me to a group chat with her and her other partners. They're all talking about me, discussing my potential, and debating whether they should try to convince me to come back. By this point, I'm in full-on panic mode. I'm seriously considering changing my number, maybe even moving to a different city. But then I remember Mike. He's the one who set this whole thing up. I call him, ready to tear him a new one, but he doesn't answer. I finally make it home and lock all the doors and windows. I'm paranoid that Fiona and her crew might try to track me down. I spend the rest of the night jumping at every little noise, convinced that I'm about to be kidnapped and forced into some kind of kinky polyamorous cult. The next morning, I wake up to find even more messages from Fiona and her partners. They'd gone from disappointed to angry, accusing me of leading them on and wasting their time. I block all their numbers and delete the messages without reading them. I finally get hold of Mike later that day. Turns out he had no idea about Fiona's lifestyle. He's mortified and keeps apologizing, saying he just thought she was a nice, normal girl from his yoga class. I'm too exhausted to be mad at him, but I make him promise to never, ever try to set me up again. For the next few weeks, I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see Fiona or one of her partners following me. I avoid that bar like the plague and even switch out my usual routines, just in case. Eventually, things start to calm down. The messages stop, and I don't see any sign of Fiona or her crew around town. I start to relax, thinking maybe the whole thing is finally over. Then, about a month after the date, I run into Fiona at the grocery store. My heart practically stops when I see her, but to my surprise, she just gives me a small nod and keeps walking. No angry confrontation, no trying to convince me to join her polyamorous adventure. Nothing. As I watch her walk away, I feel a mix of relief and, weirdly, a tiny bit of regret. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad I didn't get sucked into whatever crazy situation she had going on. But a small part of me wonders what would have happened if I'd stayed that night. I guess some questions are better left unanswered. I've sworn off blind dates for the foreseeable future, and have made Mike promise to run any potential setups by me in excruciating detail before even suggesting them. I'm standing outside the Rusty Nail, our local pub, trying to muster up the courage to go inside. Why? Because I'm about to make the biggest mistake of my life, joining a single parent's blind date event. If only I knew then what I know now, I'd have turned tail and run for the hills. So there I am, sweating like a pig in my nice shirt, the one without the barbic stains, when this guy bumps into me. Turns out it's my old buddy Phil from work. He's all excited, babbling about how he met his new girlfriend at one of these things last month. Great, just what I need, more pressure. But his enthusiasm is infectious, and before I know it, I'm being swept inside on a wave of nervous energy and the smell of stale beer. The pub's packed, way more people than I expected. There's a mix of emotions in the air, excitement, nervousness, and a hint of desperation. I make a beeline for the bar, figuring a drink might help calm my nerves. As I'm waiting for my beer, I scan the room. It's a real mixed bag. Some folks look like they'd just stepped out of a magazine, others, well, let's just say they've seen better days. I'm halfway through my drink when this overly perky woman with a clipboard approaches. She's got a smile plastered on her face that's so wide, it's gotta hurt. She asks for my name, checks it off her list, and hands me a number. Your match is over by the dartboard, she chirps, pointing to the far corner of the pub. I drain my beer, take a deep breath, and start weaving through the crowd. As I get closer to the dartboard, I start to make out a familiar figure. No way, I think to myself. It can't be. But it is. Standing there, looking bored and slightly annoyed, is Sarah Johnson, the bane of my high school existence. Now, let me paint you a picture of Sarah. Back in high school, she was that girl everyone knew to avoid, always stirring up drama, spreading nasty rumors, and leaving a trail of broken hearts and bruised egos in her wake. She had this way of making you feel like you were the most important person in the world one minute, then crushing you beneath her designer boots the next. As I approach, her eyes lock onto mine. There's a flicker of recognition, followed by something that makes my blood run cold. It's a look I've seen before, right before she destroyed someone's reputation or relationship for fun. But I'm here now, might as well see it through, right? Weirdly awkward, hey, long time no see dance, then grab a table. Sarah orders some fancy cocktail while I stick to beer. Liquid courage and all that. At first, it's just the usual small talk. What we've been up to since high school, our jobs, that sort of thing. But then things take a turn for the weird. Sarah starts talking about her ex-husbands. Yes, husbands plural. Turns out, in the years since high school, she's been married and divorced 7 times. 7. And the way she talks about these guys, it's like she's describing pests she's exterminated rather than men she once loved. The first guy, according to Sarah, couldn't handle her independence. She talks about how he went missing during a camping trip, a sly smile playing on her lips. The second one had an unfortunate accident involving our prize winning rose bushes. Number 3 developed some mysterious allergies that forced him to move out, and it just gets worse from there. As she's rattling off this disturbing marital history, I'm trying to flag down a waiter. I need another drink badly. But Sarah's on a roll, and she's not about to let me escape that easily. She grabs my arm, her nails digging in just a little too hard, and leans in close. That's when she starts in on her real views about men. And let me tell you, it's not pretty. According to Sarah, all men are primitive, mouth-breathing Neanderthals incapable of basic human decency. She's got this little notebook she keeps pulling out, jotting down what she calls her theories on male inferiority. I'm sitting there wondering how the hell I'm going to get out of this situation, when Sarah starts outlining her grand plan to re-educate the male population. It involves some seriously messed up ideas that I'm pretty sure violate several human rights laws. All while she's giving me these looks like she's sizing me up for her next project. Just when I think it can't get any worse, Sarah mentions her kids. 5 boys, all under the age of 10. The way she talks about their training makes my skin crawl. I find myself wondering if I should call Child Protective Services or something. By this point, I'm desperate to escape. I try every trick in the book, fake bathroom breaks, pretend phone calls, even spilling my drink on purpose. But Sarah's like a bloodhound. She follows me to the bar, waits outside the bathroom, sees through every lame excuse I can come up with. The other people at the event are starting to notice. I catch snippets of whispered conversations, see people pointing in our direction. Great, now I'm part of the evening's entertainment. As the night finally starts to wind down, I think I'm in the clear. But Sarah's got one last surprise up her sleeve. She suggests we continue our discussion at her place. A look in her eye makes it clear this isn't just an innocent nightcap she has in mind. I mumble something about an early morning and make a break for the exit. But as I'm leaving, Sarah calls out that she'll find me on social media, that we're destined to meet again. I don't look back, just keep moving until I'm out in the cool night air. I jump in my car and peel out of the parking lot like I'm in a getaway scene for a heist movie. My heart's pounding, and I keep checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see Sarah's car following me. When I finally get home, I lock the door, close all the curtains, and pour myself a stiff drink. As I sit there in the dark, trying to process what just happened, my phone pings. It's a friend request from Sarah Johnson. I hit delete so fast I nearly crack my screen. Then I block her number, her email, every social media account I can find. I even considered changing my name and moving to another country, but that seems a bit extreme. For now. So that's it. That's how my attempt at getting back into the dating scene turned into a night of pure horror. I've sworn off blind dates for good. I might just swear off dating altogether. After all, being single isn't so bad. At least it's safe. So there I was getting ready for this blind date my coworker set me up. He'd been hyping this girl Megan up for weeks, telling me how perfect we'd be together. I'm not usually into the whole blind date scene, but my boy can be pretty persuasive when he wants to be. Plus, I figured what's the worst that could happen, right? Famous last words. I spent way too long picking out my outfit, settle on my lucky shirt, the one that makes my arms look extra good, and even splurge on some fancy perfume. Wanted to make a good impression and all that jazz. I headed to this trendy little cafe downtown, feeling pretty good about myself. I got there a bit early, grabbed a table, and started people watching while I waited. That's when I saw her walk in, and let me tell you, my boy wasn't lying about how hot she was. Long legs, killer smile, the whole package. But here's where things started to get weird. She had this massive Great Dane with her. I'm talking horse-sized dog here. Now, I'm not really a dog person to begin with, but I figured I could roll with it. Maybe she couldn't find a sitter or something. So I waved her over, trying to ignore the fact that this dog was giving me some serious side-eye. Megan sat down, and we started chatting. She was cool, funny, and we were hitting it off pretty well. But the whole time, this dog is just staring at me like I owe it money or something. It was seriously creeping me out, but I tried to play it cool. About half an hour in, Megan excuses herself to use the bathroom. That's when things went from weird to full-on crazy. As soon as she was out of sight, this dog stands up and starts growling at me. I'm talking full-on, teeth-baring, I'm gonna eat you for breakfast kind of growl. I froze up, not sure what to do. This thing was massive. It could probably take my arm off if it wanted to. I try to calm it down, speaking in this soft voice like I've seen people do on TV. Nice doggy, I'm saying good boy, but it wasn't having any of it. It took a step closer, still growling, and that's when I noticed something else. There was this weird bulge in its lower belly. At first, I thought maybe it was just fat or something, but then I realized with horror that it was, well, let's just say it was excited, and not in a good way. Before I could even process what was happening, this dog lifts its leg and starts peeing all over me. I'm talking full-on fire hose action here. It's getting all over my new shoes, my lucky shirt, even my coffee. I jumped up trying to get away, but it's like this thing had perfect aim or something. I'm standing there, dripping wet and shock, when Megan comes back from the bathroom. And you know what? She doesn't even seem surprised. She just laughs and says something about how her little angel must really like me. Like who reacts like that when their dog pees on someone. I mumbled something about needing to clean up and bolted to the bathroom. I spent like 10 minutes in there, trying to dry off with paper towels and scrubbing at my clothes. But it was useless. The smell was everywhere, and my clothes were soaked through. When I finally came out of the bathroom, still dripping and smelling like a fire hydrant, I saw Megan chatting up some other guy at the counter. She barely even noticed me as I tried to slink past and make my escape. I made it outside and just stood there for a minute trying to process what had just happened. Did I really just get peed on by a dog on a blind date? Was this some kind of elaborate prank? I half expected someone to jump out with a camera, telling me I was on some twisted reality show. But nope, it was all too real. I could still feel the wetness seeping into my socks, still smell that unmistakable odor of dog urine. I started walking home, trying to ignore the strange looks I was getting from people on the street. The whole way home, my mind was racing. Was there something I did to provoke the dog? Did Megan train it to do that? Is this some weird kink I've never heard of before? I mean, who brings a dog on a first date anyway? And who laughs when their dog pees on someone? By the time I got home, I was a mess. I stripped off my clothes and jumped in the shower, scrubbing myself raw trying to get rid of the smell. But even after I was clean and in fresh clothes, I swear I could still smell it. It's like it was burned into my nostrils or something. I texted my co-worker to let him know what happened. His response, haha, that's wild, bro. Yeah, thanks a lot, buddy. Real helpful. I mean, what kind of girl was he setting me up with? Did he know about the dog? Was this some kind of sick joke? I spent the rest of the night trying to distract myself, but I couldn't stop replaying the whole thing in my head. I kept second-guessing myself, wondering if there was anything I could have done differently. Should I have left as soon as I saw the dog? Should I have been more assertive when it started growling? The next day, I woke up hoping it had all been a bad dream. But nope, my lucky shirt was still sitting in the laundry basket, reeking of dog pee. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away, even though I knew I'd never wear it again. I spent most of the day in a daze, still trying to make sense of what had happened. I mean, how do you even recover from something like that? Do you call the girl and demand an explanation? Do you just pretend it never happened and try to move on with your life? I thought about texting Megan, but what would I even say? Hey, remember me? The guy your dog used as a fire hydrant. Yeah, that'd go over real well. Plus, she seemed pretty unbothered by the whole thing, which was almost weirder than the peeing incident itself. By the end of the day, I pretty much decided to chalk it up as a bizarre experience and try to forget about it. I mean, what else could I do? It's not like there's a support group for people who've been peed on by dogs during dates. It all started when my buddy Jake wouldn't shut up about this guy he knew from his gym. Come on, give Alfie a chance, Jake kept saying. He's a bit shy, but he's a great guy. After weeks of pestering, I caved. What's the worst that could happen, right? Oh boy, was I in for a surprise. We agreed to meet at this trendy new cafe downtown. I got there early, grabbed a table, and waited. My stomach was doing somersaults, but I tried to stay chill. Then Alfie walked in, and my first thought was, okay, not that. He was tall, kind of lanky, with messy brown hair and these thick-framed glasses that made him look like a hipster librarian. But as soon as he sat down, things got weird. Alfie was fidgeting like crazy, his leg bouncing up and down so fast I thought he might drill a hole in the floor. He kept wiping his palms on his pants and adjusting his glasses every 5 seconds. I tried to break the ice with some small talk, but it was like pulling teeth. He'd just nod or give one-word answers, then go back to staring at the table. I was about to give up and call it quits when I noticed Alfie was starting to sweat, like a lot. His forehead was glistening, and dark patches were forming under his arms. I asked if he was feeling okay, and he just nodded frantically, his eyes darting around the cafe like he was looking for an escape route. That's when I smelled it. At first, I thought someone had brought in some rank food or something, but then I realized it was coming from our table. More specifically, it was coming from Alfie. The smell kept getting stronger, and I was trying not to gag. Alfie's face was turning beet red, and he was squirming in his seat like he was sitting in my cactus. I was about to suggest we step outside for some air when I saw it. A dark stain was spreading across the back of Alfie's khaki pants. My brain couldn't process what was happening at first. Then it hit me like a truck. This 28-year-old dude was literally crapping his pants right in front of me. I sat there in shock, my mouth hanging open like a fish. Alfie must have realized what was happening because his eyes went wide with panic. He started stammering and stuttering, trying to explain, but no real words came out. And then, as if this nightmare couldn't get any worse, he burst into tears. I'm not talking about a few quiet sniffles. This was full-on ugly crying. Snot bubbles, hiccuping sobs, the whole 9 yards. People at nearby tables were starting to stare, and I wanted to crawl under the table and die. I tried to calm him down, offering him napkins and telling him it was okay. But Alfie just kept bawling and apologizing between sobs. The smell was so bad at this point that I was fighting the urge to puke. Some people nearby were covering their noses and shooting us dirty looks. Eventually, I managed to get Alfie to his feet and started guiding him towards the bathroom. He was still sobbing uncontrollably, leaving a trail of, well, as we walked. The other customers were openly gawking now, and I could hear whispers and shocked gasps. I left Alfie at the men's room door and went back to our table to grab our stuff. The barista came over with a look of horror on her face, asking if everything was okay. I mumbled something about my friend being sick and apologized about 1,000,000 times for the mess. After what felt like forever, Alfie came out of the bathroom. His pants were soaked from trying to clean them in the sink, and his eyes were all red and puffy from crying. I handed him his jacket to tie around his waist and suggested we get the hell out of there. The walk to the parking lot was the most awkward thing I've ever experienced. Alfie kept sniffling and hiccuping, occasionally letting out a fresh sob. I didn't know what to say, so I just patted his arm awkwardly and told him it would be okay, even though I didn't believe it myself. When we got to his car, Alfie turned to me with this devastated look on his face. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. I told him not to worry about it and that he should just go home and rest. I couldn't handle any more apologies or explanations. As I watched Alfie drive away, still sniffling and hunched over the steering wheel, I just stood there in the parking lot, trying to process what the hell had just happened. Part of me felt bad for the guy. Clearly, he had some serious anxiety issues. But another part of me was just pissed off and grossed out. I called Jake on my way home and ripped him a new one. He was shocked and kept apologizing, saying he had no idea Alfie would react like that. I told him in no uncertain terms that he was never, ever allowed to set me up on a date again. For weeks after, I couldn't even look at a cup of coffee without feeling queasy. The smell of the cafe mixed with, was burned into my brain. I had nightmares about the whole thing, waking up in a cold sweat with the image of Alfie's tear-streaked, snot-covered face vivid in my mind. Every time I thought about dating again, I'd remember Alfie and his pants and immediately change my mind. I became known as a guy with a poop date story among my friends, which was not exactly the reputation I was going for. I still can't believe it actually happened. Sometimes I wonder what became of Alfie if he ever managed to go on another date without, losing his shit. But mostly, I just try to forget the whole thing ever happened. And let me tell you, I'm never agreeing to a blind date again. No way, no how. My phone buzzes with a text from my buddy Chris. Yo, Sam, I said go up on a blind date tomorrow. Thank me later. Before I could even respond, he sends me a screenshot of this girl's profile. Her name's Paulina, and holy crap, she's gorgeous. Now, I'm not usually the blind date type, but something about Paulina's pic made me think, what the hell, why not? So I text Chris back, I'm in. He gives me the details. We're meeting at this trendy new cafe downtown at 2 p.m. I spend the rest of the night overthinking what to wear and stalking Paulina's Instagram. Rookie mistake, I know. Saturday rolls around and I'm a bundle of nerves. I throw on my lucky shirt. It's got tiny cacti all over it, don't judge, and head out. I get to the cafe early, because punctuality is my jam. I'm sitting there sipping an overpriced lop and trying not to look like I'm about to puke from nervousness. Then she walks in. Paulina's even hotter in person, if that's possible. She's rocking this flowy sundress and has this smile that could melt steel beams. I stand up way too fast, almost knocking over my chair. Smooth, Sam, real smooth. But Paulina just laughs it off, and we start chatting. Turns out we got a ton in common. We're both into true crime podcasts, love spicy food, and have an unhealthy obsession with 90s cartoons. The conversation flows so easily it's like we've known each other for years. After about an hour, Paulina suggests we take a walk in the park across the street. I'm all for it, riding high on how well this is going. We stroll along, and she links her arm through mine. I'm thinking, is this actually happening? To me. We find a spot under this big oak tree and sit down. Paulina's telling me about her backpacking trip through Europe, and I'm hanging on every word. I've got my backpack with me, force of habit. I always carry it, and I set it down next to us. As we're talking, Paulina casually mentions she's got a killer headache coming on. She asks if I've got any painkillers in my bag. I tell her, yeah, I think so, and start rummaging through my backpack. But I can't find them. Paulina offers to look, saying she's got magic hands when it comes to finding lost stuff. I hand her the bag, and she starts searching. She's joking around, pulling out random stuff and teasing me about my man purse. I'm laughing, totally at ease. After a few minutes, she hands the bag back, saying no luck. I shrug it off, figuring I must have forgotten to restock. We keep talking for another hour or so, and I'm feeling like the luckiest guy alive. As the sun starts to set, Paulina says she's got to head out. Early morning yoga class or something. We stand up, and she gives me this long hug. Then she looks up at me with those big green eyes and kisses me. It's soft and sweet, and my brain basically short circuits. Paulina pulls away, smiling, and says she had a great time. She promises to text me later and walks off. I stand there for a solid minute, probably grinning like an idiot before I head home. I'm on cloud 9 the whole way back to my apartment. I can't wait to text Chris and tell him he's the best wingman ever. I flop down on my couch and reach for my phone to pull up Paulina's Instagram again. But my phone's not in my pocket. Nobody, I think. Must be in my backpack. I unzip it and start looking. No phone. Weird. I dump everything out on the coffee table. Still no phone. Now I'm starting to freak out a little. That's when I notice my wallet's missing too, and my keys. Basically, anything valuable that was in my bag is gone. My stomach drops as reality starts to sink in. No way. This can't be happening. I race to my laptop and log into my bank account. My heart's pounding so hard I can hear it in my ears. The page loads, and I feel like I'm gonna be sick. There are charges everywhere, electronics stores, high-end clothing shops, even a freaking jewelry store. Thousands of dollars, all racked up in the last couple of hours. I try to call Paulina, but her number's been disconnected. I message Chris, asking for more info about her. He has no idea what I'm talking about. Turns out someone hacked his phone and set up the whole thing, the profile pic, stolen from some model's Instagram. The next few days are a blur of police reports, calls to banks, and canceling cards. The cops aren't optimistic about catching her. Apparently, she's pulled this stunt before in other cities. They think she's part of some organized crime ring that specializes in romance scams. I can't stop replaying every moment of the date in my head. The way she laughed at my jokes, how she looked at me when we kissed. Was any of it real? I feel like such an idiot. How could I have fallen for it? It's been a few weeks now, and I'm still dealing with the fallout. My credit score has taken a hit, and I'm paranoid about trusting anyone new. But you know what the worst part is? For those few hours in the park, I really thought I'd found something special. Now, I'm left with an empty wallet and a broken heart. Fast forward to me swiping through profiles like it's my job. That's when I stumbled across Kyle. Dude looked decent enough, kinda scruffy in a hipster way. Big grin, holding a skateboard in his pic. His bio was all about how he was living life on 4 wheels and looking for someone to ride through life with. Cheesy, but whatever. I figured why not. Swiped right, we matched, and before I knew it, we were setting up a date for the next night. Saturday rolls around, and I'm low-key nervous. I mean, I've been on blind dates before, but there's always that little voice in your head wondering if this person's gonna be a total weirdo. I tried to push those thoughts aside as I got ready, threw on my favorite jeans and a cute top, and headed out to meet Kyle at this trendy little burrito place downtown. I get there a few minutes early, grab a table, and start scrolling through my phone to kill time. 5 minutes pass, then 10, then 15. I'm starting to think I've been stood up when this guy walks in. At first, I didn't even realize it was Kyle. His profile pic must have been from years ago because this dude looked way older and, let's just say he put on a few pounds. But hey, I'm not one to judge on looks alone. So when he spots me and comes over, I put on my best smile and try to keep an open mind. We do the awkward nice to meet you thing, and he sits down across from me. That's when I notice he's got this beat-up skateboard with him, like he's actually carrying it into the restaurant. We start chatting, and at first, it's your typical first date small talk. Where are you from? What do you do for work? That kind of thing. But every time I try to ask Kyle something about himself, he somehow steers the conversation back to skateboarding. And not just skateboarding in general, but the specific board he's denying. I'm trying to be polite, nodding along, asking questions. But after about 20 minutes of nonstop skateboard talk, I'm starting to feel like I'm on a date with a teenager, not a grown man. I try to change the subject, ask about his job or his family or literally anything else. But nope, it's all skateboard all the time. Then things take a turn for the weird. Kyle starts talking about how he's been saving up for this epic new board, but he's having trouble making ends meet. I'm thinking, okay, maybe he's just venting a bit. But then he starts dropping hints about how generous I seem and how cool it would be to have someone who supports his passions. At this point, red flags are popping up left and right, but I'm also kind of fascinated in a car crash sort of way. Like, where is this dude going with this? Well, I didn't have to wait long to find out. Out of nowhere, Kyle just straight up asked me if I'd be willing to buy him this skateboard. I'm sitting there, burrito halfway to my mouth, thinking I must have heard him wrong. But nope, he's dead serious. And get this, his big selling point is that if I buy it for him, he'll let me ride it sometimes. Like that's some kind of amazing deal. I'm trying to process this. We've known each other for maybe an hour, tops, and he's asking me to drop a few $100 on a skateboard for him. And his grand offer is that I get to use it occasionally. I mean, come on. I politely decline, trying to laugh it off like it's a joke. But Kyle's not laughing. He starts going on about how I'm crushing his dreams and how I don't understand how important this is. I'm sitting there thinking, dude, we just met. Your dreams are not my problem. Then he starts getting worked up, like really worked up. His voice is getting louder, he's waving his arms around. People at other tables are starting to stare. I'm feeling super uncomfortable and, honestly, a bit scared at this point. I decide it's time to bail. I stand up, grab my purse, and tell Kyle I'm leaving. But this guy, I swear, he follows me out of the restaurant. He's still going on about the skateboard, now promising all sorts of things if I just buy it for him. He'll teach me how to skate. He'll take me on awesome dates. He'll be the best boyfriend ever. It's like he's completely lost touch with reality. I'm speed walking down the street, trying to get away from this lunatic, and he's trailing after me like some deranged puppy. I'm looking around, hoping to spot a cop or something, because this dude is seriously freaking me out. Finally, I spot a busy coffee shop and duck inside. I quickly explain the situation to the barista, and she lets me hide out in the back room. I can see Kyle through the window, pacing back and forth outside, still clutching that damn skateboard. I'm stuck in that back room for over an hour, just waiting for Kyle to give up and leave. The barista keeps checking on me, bringing me free coffee and pastries. Chow out to her seriously. Finally, when there's no sign of Kyle, I make a run for it, practically sprinting to my car. When I get home, I'm a mess. My heart's racing, I'm sweating, I can barely believe what just happened. I call Jake and spend like 2 hours ranting about the disaster date he set me up for. He feels terrible, but I'm too worked up to really care. The next morning, I wake up to a flood of messages from Kyle. Somehow he's found me on every social media platform, sending me links to the skateboard, still trying to convince me to buy it. It's like he's completely obsessed. I block him everywhere, delete the dating app, and seriously consider changing my phone number. For the next few days, I'm jumpy as hell, half expecting to see Kyle pop up somewhere with that skateboard. It's been a week now, and I haven't heard from Kyle since, but I'm still shaken up. I mean, who does that? Who asks someone they just met to buy them an expensive skateboard, and then acts like they're doing you a favor by letting you use it? I guess the moral of the story is, Actually, you know what? There is no moral. Sometimes people are just weird as hell, and you end up with stories that no one believes. A regular dude just trying to live my best life when my sister decides to play matchmaker. She's all, "You gotta meet Samantha. She's amazing, you'll love her." Yeah, right. Should have known better than to trust my sister's judgment, but hey, I was bored and figured why not. Fast forward to Friday night. I'm standing outside this trendy new restaurant, feeling like a total tool in my button-down shirt and slacks. I mean, who am I kidding? I'm more of a t-shirt and jeans kind of guy, but I wanted to make a good impression. Mistake number one. I spot Samantha waddling towards me, and I squared my jaw and nearly hit the pavement. Now, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but this girl was big. Like, make the earth move when she walks big. I'm talking about a person who probably hasn't seen her feet in years. And here's the kicker. My sister had conveniently forgotten to mention this tiny detail. But whenever I'm not completely shallow, I put on my best fake smile and say hi. Samantha's friendly enough, and we head inside. The hostess gives us this look, like she's trying to figure out if we have enough space between tables. I pretend not to notice and follow her to our booth. Now, here's where things start to get dicey. Samantha tries to squeeze into the booth, and I swear I hear the wood creaking. I'm sitting there, holding my breath, praying to whatever deity will listen that this thing doesn't collapse. Somehow, we make it through the seating process without incident. Small victories, right? We order drinks, and already planning my escape route. But then Samantha starts talking, and surprisingly, she's pretty cool. We bond over our mutual love for old school movies and our shared hatred for pineapple on pizza. For a hot minute, I forget about the whole size issue and actually start enjoying myself. But then comes the food. Oh boy, the food. Samantha orders enough to feed a small army. I'm talking appetizers, entrees, sides, the works. I try not to stare as she demolishes plate after plate, but it's like watching a car crash in slow motion. You just can't look away. Halfway through her third meal, Samantha catches me looking. She puts down her fork, and I can see the wheels turning in her head. Then comes the question I've been dreading all night. Jake, do you think I'm fat? Talk about being caught between a rock and a hard place. I mean, what am I supposed to say? Nah, you're just big boned. You're not fat, you're fluffy. In a moment of panic, I blurt out, maybe a little. Big mistake. Huge. No pun intended. Samantha's face crumples faster than a paper bag in a rainstorm. Before I know it, she's bawling her eyes out right there in the middle of the restaurant. I'm talking full-on, snot bubble-blowing sobbing. People are staring, the waiter's hovering awkwardly, and I'm wishing the floor would open up and swallow me whole. I try to backpedal, stumbling over my words like a drunk trying to walk a straight line. I didn't mean it like that, I stammer. You're beautiful just the way you are. But it's too late. The damage is done. And then, as if the universe decided I hadn't suffered enough, the unthinkable happens. Samantha stands up, probably to storm off dramatically, and the chair gives way beneath her. There's this sickening crack, and suddenly she's on the floor, surrounded by splintered wood and half-eaten pasta. The entire restaurant goes silent. You can hear a pin drop. Then Samantha lets out this wail that would put a banshee to shame. I'm frozen in place, caught between wanting to help and wanting to run for the hills. But wait, it gets worse. As I reach down to help Samantha up, she snaps. And I don't mean she gets a little upset. I mean she goes full-on Hulk mode. Suddenly, all her embarrassment and hurt turns into rage, and guess who's the target? Yours truly. She starts hurling insults at me like she's pitching for the World Series. You skinny little twig, she screams. At least I don't look like a half-starved scarecrow. She's going for the jugular, picking apart everything from my hair to my shoes. I'm standing there, shell-shocked, as this woman I've known for all of 2 hours tears into me like it's her jaw. The other diners are watching with a mix of horror and fascination. I swear I see someone pull out their phone to start recording. Now, I'm usually a pretty chill guy. I don't like confrontation. But something in me snaps. Maybe it's the stress of the evening. Maybe it's the 2 glasses of overpriced wine I downed earlier. Whatever it is, I decide I'm not going to take this lying down. Listen, I say, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. That wasn't my intention. But you don't get to talk to me like that. Body shaming goes both ways, and what you're doing right now is not okay. Samantha's mouth drops open. She looks like she's been slapped with a wet fish. Clearly, she's not used to people standing up to her. For a moment, we're locked in this weird standoff. The whole restaurant is holding its breath, waiting to see what happens next. Then, without a word, I turn on my heel and walk out. As I hit the cool night air, I can hear the murmur of voices starting up again behind me. My hands are shaking as I fumble for my car keys. Part of me feels bad for leaving Samantha there, but a bigger part is just relieved to be out of that nightmare. I drive home in a daze, replaying the evening in my head. By the time I pull into my driveway, I've already decided two things. One, I'm never going on another blind date as long as I live. And two, my sister owes me big time for this fiasco. As I flop onto my couch, still in my fancy date clothes, I can't help but laugh. It's either that or cry at this point. I mean, who could have predicted a simple dinner would turn into such a circus? I grab my phone, ready to give my sister an earful, but pause when I see a text from an unknown number. It's Samantha. I'm sorry, it reads, "Can we talk?" I stare at the message for a long moment, then toss the phone aside without replying. Some disasters are better left in the past. Tonight's blind date, definitely one of them.